When you're a waiter, you get immediate feedback on how well you do your job in the form of tips. At least in theory, the better you do your job, or the more you do it with a smile, the more money you make. But sometimes, tips aren't about you, they're about your customers, and they can make you lose or regain faith in humanity. That's precisely what a young waiter in Los Angeles recently discovered when he received a tip that will bring tears to your eyes. Lucas Anderson is the kind of person you will rarely see getting angry or losing his temper. His patience is infinite, and his ability to stay calm in difficult situations is truly amazing. Even in those really stressful situations where others often get overwhelmed and end up arguing, Anderson knows how to stay calm, and instead of confronting the problem head-on, he prefers to look for an alternative path where all parties can agree. Perhaps that's why he's been a barista at one of the most famous and busiest coffee shops in the city of Los Angeles for so long. Of course, Lucas's dream was never to become a restaurant employee of the month, nor to be the most experienced waiter on staff, but life never made it easy for him. And instead of studying to be a cook, as he had always wanted, at 18 he had to find a job to help his family get by. Someday, in the not-too-distant future, you may be able to fulfill your dreams, son. But now you have to sacrifice for the family, just like I had to do when I was your age. The family economy is a disaster. You know that better than anyone. You're the older brother, and as such, you have to answer for your 3 younger brothers and give them a good example to follow. They don't understand it now and won't appreciate it, but when they grow up, they will thank you, just as your mother and I do now. We need you, honey. I wouldn't ask you if I didn't. These were the words Lucas's father, Mr. Steve Anderson, said to him many years ago when he found himself in the difficult situation of having to ask his oldest son for help in order to pay the bills at the end of the month. "Family comes first, Dad. You don't have to apologize to me. You and Mom have been working tirelessly for us for years, and you've never complained about having to do it. Now it's my time. It's my turn to sacrifice for the sake of my family, and I will do it proud. If life has other plans for me, there will be time to find out. Now my only plan is to help. Dreams can wait," Lucas told his father calmly, in an attempt to lessen his guilt for forcing him to forget his dream of studying cooking and go to work. Lucas took on his role as a big brother with amazing fortitude and demonstrated a level of maturity uncommon for a boy of just 18. However, although at first Anderson kept thinking of returning to his studies when his family's financial situation improved, things did not go as he had hoped, and what was supposed to be a temporary situation became permanent. As time went on, the young and dreamy 18-year-old Lucas was left behind, giving way to a good-hearted 33-year-old hard-working man whose only concern was to ensure the well-being of his family. Unfortunately, when Anderson was just 20 years old, his father passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack while driving home from work. The loss of his father left the family completely broken and made the emotional burden that young Lucas carried on his back practically unbearable. In spite of everything, Lucas never lost faith and continued to fight to help his family. He never regretted having to give up his dreams and managed to be happy with the life he had to live. At the age of 25, he fell in love with a young kindergarten teacher, Claire, whom he would marry 2 years later, and with whom he would have a son and a daughter, Mark and Sophie. And so it is that we come to the present day, the moment in which our endearing story takes place, and in which our protagonist was working, as he had been doing since he was 18 years old, in his position as a waiter in one of the most famous restaurants east of the city of Los Angeles, California. It all happened during a summer afternoon at the restaurant where Lucas worked. That day was quite hot, in fact, one of the hottest of the entire summer season, and both the interior and the terrace of the restaurant had remained full throughout the day, causing the work and stress level of the waiters to increase as the hours went by. Anderson, who was already the restaurant's head waiter, given his experience in the position, was working his usual 8-hour shift. And although he was used to working under pressure, that day he was finding it especially difficult to fulfill all his obligations. And that day, apart from the large number of tourists that were in the place asking for attention every 5 minutes, there was a noisy group of 4 teenagers celebrating a kind of homecoming party. And it could be said that their behavior, as one would expect from a bunch of teenagers enjoying their summer vacation, was far from appropriate. Throughout the evening, the four young men sang, shouted, and kept asking for more drinks and appetizers in a rather impolite manner. Anderson was very used to having to deal with such customers. After all, he had been working there for more than 15 years. So at that point in his life, he had seen it all as a bartender. The experienced waiter decided to continue doing his job without paying too much attention to the welcoming party group, and wait patiently for them to leave so he could go back to enjoying the quiet atmosphere. However, there was one small detail he hadn't counted on, which made his patience finally wear thin, and made him furious: the tip. Being a waiter is a really exhausting job, and one of the most complicated aspects that these workers will always have to deal with is precisely the tips. Nobody asks for them, of course, but we all know that they expect it, and that leaving a good tip to the person who has served us during our stay in a restaurant is a sign of good manners that everyone will appreciate. Lucas had lived through all kinds of experiences throughout his career, but tips had always been something he had managed to get along with quite well. He was very conscious of the quality of his service, as was everyone who knew him, and everyone he served in the restaurant used to reward him handsomely for his excellent services. However, there were days when that did not happen, because life is not always fair, and Lucas had to bite his tongue and go home feeling that his work was worthless. That afternoon was one of those days. After dismissing the group of teenagers politely, perhaps too politely for his liking, and thanking them for spending the afternoon at his restaurant, Lucas walked over to the table where they had been seated and picked up the tip tray. The waiter turned pale when he saw the amount of money on the plate. $3. That was all. There's nothing more frustrating than receiving little or no tip and having the customer smile and thank me on the way out. It's like they've been laughing at me the whole time. $3 measly, can you believe it? Exclaimed the waiter to one of his more trusted companions, after picking up the table where the teenagers had been all afternoon. The teenagers' stingy tipping made the waiter seriously question the way the teenagers' parents had raised them. If my father had seen them behave that way and then seen the tip they had left, he would have gone mad with rage. I'm sure he would. It's outrageous. I don't understand how they're educating the new generations. They have no respect for anything, nor do they understand the value of work. It's very disappointing, really. It's on days like today that I wonder if our work has any value for society. Does it? I don't know, the waiter questioned in disgust. Lucas was really irritated by the attitude the teenagers had had with him and his colleagues. That day, Anderson returned home tired and sad, and not even his children or his wife could bring a smile to his face for the next few days. However, just 10 days later, a letter arrived that completely changed his mood. It was a letter of apology from the four teenagers at the party. Lucas couldn't believe what he was reading. Even tears came to his eyes. It was a simple letter, handwritten in blue marker pen, in which one of the young men he served that day apologized on behalf of all his colleagues and thanked him greatly for the patience and attention he gave them throughout the afternoon. "We are very sorry if we have caused you any discomfort or offended you with our attitude. The truth is that we had never had to leave a tip before, and we didn't know the right amount to give you. So when we returned home and realized our mistake, we thought we should apologize to you and reward you for how well you behaved with us," read one of the excerpts from the letter. Overall, the entire letter was a big apology for their childish attitude during their stay at the restaurant and for the $3 tip they had left for him when they left. But the letter would not be the most surprising thing Lucas would receive that day. Inside the envelope where the letter had arrived was something else, something that made Lucas deeply excited and proud to be a good waiter: an $18 tip. "We've all scraped together what little savings we have so we could give you the tip you deserved. It's still not much money for how kind you were, but it's all we have. Thank you so much for how well you behaved with us," the letter concluded. Lucas reread the letter a couple more times. He wanted to make sure he hadn't dreamed it, and that the words were still there. Then, after wiping his tears and calming down a bit, he hurried to share the letter and its contents with his wife and later with his coworkers. And it was precisely a coworker who, a few days later, would give him the idea to share a photo of the letter on the internet to thank them for the gesture and to show the rest of the young people that education still exists. Don't be afraid, Lucas. Nowadays, everything is published on the internet and nothing happens. Maybe you'll never hear from those kids again, or maybe you will. Who knows? But by sharing it, it will stop being just something that concerns you, and you will allow other people to identify with you and the situation you went through as a waiter. advised Mia, a waitress who had been working with Lucas at the restaurant for more than 6 years. They were very good friends. Lucas decided to follow his friend's advice, and a week after receiving the apology letter and the tip, he wrote a post on social media explaining the whole story, along with a photo of the letter in full. "I don't know how you learned or were educated about tipping, but I really appreciate the effort and kindness. I hope your homecoming was fantastic," wrote Anderson in his post. Today, the teen's letter and Lucas's story has gone viral, with people from all over praising them and their parents for the good education they've given them. On the post, there are also thousands of positive comments directed at Lucas. In the comments, users identify with him and applaud his work as a waiter and his efforts to always satisfy his customers, even in really difficult situations where he wishes he could do just the opposite. Its history makes us think that there is still hope for the new generations, and that among so much technology and lack of good manners, there is still a place for education and respect for a job well done. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.